In this video, we're going to take a look at the horizontal toolbar available inside the material editor, which you can see here down beneath all of your sample slots. Now, the first button that you see here is for getting a material. And when they say get material, they really mean it, because you can get it from just about anywhere. If you click on this, you get this really cool window that looks a lot like your material map navigator that we showed a few seconds ago. In fact, let me squash things down a little bit so the whole thing can fit inside the recording window. Now, the first thing we're going to see here is whatever we have selected is going to appear up here. We have a little toolbar to control how we see things, again, very much like the material map navigator. We have a little window where we'll see a preview of whatever it is we have selected. And we can choose where we're going to be getting the material from. Would we like to get it brand new? Just basically get it from all the things Max can create. If we want to pull it out of our scene, now right now we have a blank scene, so there's nothing in here. From a selected material, from an active slot inside the material editor, so you'll notice here we immediately get 01 default. From the material editor itself. So here's all 24 of our materials available. And then finally from our material library, which we haven't installed on our machines to save a little bit of space. But if you have installed all of the various aspects of 3ds Max, you will have a library in here of different types of materials that you can draw from.
And actually, if you go back to new, you can actually kind of filter which materials you want to see or which maps by checking materials or maps.
That's right. Do we want to show just materials? Do we want to show just maps, or vice versa? I said that backwards. Notice if you try to uncheck them all, something will check itself back. And you can also show incompatible, which will bring up all of the various mental ray materials that currently mean nothing to us because we're not using mental ray. Now, that's pretty much all that I really want to focus on here. I mean, of course, you can basically scale this down even further to only two-dimensional maps, 3D maps, anything that's compositing, color mods, and all sorts of other things. We'll just leave this at all for the time being. So, yeah, I guess that's all I really want to show there. It's just a place for you to access materials and pull them into the material editor so that you can edit them.
Get material.
That's right. Now, next to this, we have put material to scene. And this actually confuses a lot of students who haven't been working with the material editor much. You can think of this as material replacement in a lot of cases.
It's actually pretty handy if you have the same material applied to many different objects in your scene, and you want to swap out that material for a different one.
That's right. I primarily use this only when I'm replacing a material that already exists in my scene. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me go ahead and create a sphere. And there we go. Let's go ahead and make a few copies of the sphere.
Awesome.
Hold down Shift, and let's say here, and I'll click up a few times. So I have 7 spheres. Now let me create a material over here. Well, I have a material. Let's kind of edit one. Let's call this, let's say, William. So that's our William.
Very official.
Yes. And we'll take our diffuse color, and we'll change that to some form of dark red, like so, and we'll go ahead and select all of these spheres, and I'm going to assign them all, so assign to selection.
Now, get rid of that pink.
That's right. All of these spheres have this material applied to them. Now, let's just kind of assume for a moment, kind of pretend that we have a very complex scene here. And instead of little spheres floating in a sea of nothingness, maybe we have this great big starship, and instead of spheres, we have cannons or something, right? And they're all over the place. They're everywhere. Now, for sake of example, let's say we wanted to replace the material that's on all of these objects. But we don't want to go material by material. We don't want to go object by object. We could, select one sphere, grab a new material, and assign it. We could select all of these, but again, let's say our scene is a little more complex, and it's hard to select all of these at once.
They're all over the place, and every nook and cranny you could think of.
That's right. So what we can do is take another material and give it the same name. Now, I did mention this earlier. It is just fine to have a material in your material editor, or 2 materials that have the exact same name. So we have William here, and this is also called William. But notice that as soon as I do that, as soon as I create a new material that has the same name as one that's already in the scene, this button suddenly becomes available.
That's right.
Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look at this. If I click on this particular material slot named 07 default, this button is grayed out. We can't use it. As soon as Max detects that a material we have been working on has the same name as a material in our scene, suddenly this button becomes available. If we click on this button, Put Material to Scene, Max is going to automatically sniff through our scene, find every object that has the material with the exact same name, and replace it with this selected material. I know that sounds really, I know it might sound a little bit confusing, but just think of it as a workflow. You'll create a new material, or take an existing material. You'll name it the exact same name that is of a material that already sits in your scene. Click Put to Scene, and that'll take care of it for you. It'll replace the material in your scene with whatever you have here in your material editor.
Very handy.
So let's go ahead and we'll do it again. We'll go back to our original William material, and notice now that the Put Material to Scene button is available here, so I can click that, and it sniffs everything out and replaces all that in our scene. Very, very nice. Now the next button we have here is Assign Material to Selection. You have to actually select something for this to be usable. And let me just change the color of this guy. You've actually seen me do this up through the menus.
Right.
All you do is just click here, and you dropped that material right down onto the object.
Yeah, you'll probably be using that one a lot.
Now, we can reset anything that we've changed on a material slot, or a sample slot, if you will. We have Reset Map or Material to Default Settings. Essentially, that changes everything that you've changed except the name, really.
Right.
So, also doesn't change specularity, I've noticed sometimes. But let's go ahead and let's click here. Now, do you want to affect the material and the map, or the map, in both the scene and in the editor slot? Or affect only the material map in the editor slot and leave the one in the scene alone.
So if you choose the second one, right, it's going to keep it in your scene.
That's right. So if we choose this guy and click OK, we lose it from the material editor, and now it exists only in our scene.
Right.
Now
That's a way to free up a slot.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you've used all 24 of your slots, you can free one up like that. Also, if you need to, under your utilities, you have the ability to reset all of your material editor slots, should you need to. And if you click on this, boom, they all get reset, and anything that was in your scene is now just in your scene. It's no longer in your material editor.
Still preserved.
This does allow me to show you that we can click, let's go back to Get Material, like we showed earlier, and if we check the Scene Radio button, boom, we could grab William, which is red, and we'll just double-click that, and there we go. We've now grabbed that from the scene and brought it back into the material editor so that we could go in and continue editing it.
Very handy.
Now, next to this, we have Make Material Copy, which is, this is kind of an interesting thing. Take a look at this material. Currently, you'll notice it's hot. We've got triangles in the corners. That means it is in two locations at once. It's in the material editor, and it is in our scene. If you click Make Material Copy, it's no longer hot anymore. So what just happened? 3ds Max made a separate copy of this material and put that material in our sample slot.
Right.
The material that is in our scene is different than the material that is inside our material editor, but they both have the same name. Confusing, no? Here's why this is so useful. Let me take another material slot, and let's go ahead and click Get Material again. This time I'll grab the 07 default green material that I had earlier. So now we're kind of back to what we had before. If I have a hot material and I edit, say, any attribute of it, say in this case diffuse, notice it updates here in the scene. What if I don't necessarily want that to happen? What if I want to be able to update manually? Because I have clicked on the Make Copy button, I can now come in here to this material, I can change its color to anything I like, and then when I'm done, I can click the button Put Material to Scene.
Sure.
I had the right button in there somewhere.
Yeah.
We click that, and now we've made this material hot again. We've taken that copy and used it to overwrite what was in our scene.
I see.
So if you use Copy and Put Material to Scene kind of in conjunction, it's a way for you to manually update your viewport as opposed to letting Max do it for you. Now, next to this, we have Make Unique. This is something that I'm not going to be getting into right now. This has to do with whether you have instanced a map or instanced a material. If you'd like to pull that out and make it a unique thing, very much like what we were doing in the stack with instanced objects.
Sure.
Now, for the time being, again, I'm not going to be diving into that. If we have a material that we want to save, say we've been working on this one material, this awesome thing with alligator skin and circuit boards, and we're really proud of it, and we want to save it for later, we can take the whole material and we can put it to a library, essentially save it out as a file, and it says name, we'll give it a name like something special, and then if we click OK, boom, notice nothing really happens. It's just now if we go to Get Material and we go back to our material library, there's something special because we saved that. So it's just kind of a way to be able to access that later through your library. Next to this, we have the Material ID channel. I recall when this was still called the Effects channel, but that's okay. This allows you to assign a variety of effects to a material, essentially making a material listen for a particular effect that you've set up. Not something I want to get into right now. In a nutshell, this is where you can set up things like glows or rings or fogs. Or there's all
environmental effects.
And all sorts of lens effects that you can set up. So down from here, we have Show Map in Viewport. Now, this will be a little bit tricky to show off unless I actually create a map. So
Sure.
let's go back to our William material. I'll click on the little map button next to diffuse. Again, I've done this before, and I didn't really talk about it then. I will mention what I'm doing in more detail a little bit later. But here we go. We have the 3D Buzz web page shot now covering over this material, but over here we just see blue.
Right.
We just see that diffuse color. So you can see our diffuse color is set to blue still. We have a little M here showing that we have mapped this particular attribute.
Right.
The reason we don't see the 3D Buzz web page stretched around these spheres is because that map has not been set to show in the viewport.
Right.
If we click Show Map in Viewport, ta-da! Now I can come in here and zoom in on these guys, and we have the 3D Buzz web page. See, there's Buzz's head.
Very cool.
Floating in your viewport. Right there. Ta-da! So, there we go, and I guess that's really all I want to say about that. I just saw Buzz's head, and that gave me kind of a chuckle. Now, down from here, we have Show End Result. Now, this is going to be more pertinent when you step down into a map.
Right.
Now, currently, I'm looking at the settings of a particular map. Let me make sure I am showing that map in the viewport so that we can all see this. If I maybe adjust the tiling of it so that we see multiple copies of it, you'll notice I have all sorts of controls in here that I'm not really going to discuss at the moment. But I can switch off the ability to show end result. This is on by default. As soon as I switch that off, look at what I see over here. Inside my sample slot, all I see is the map. I did mention this to you guys earlier that you could do this. And if I right-click right now, we now have the ability to render out just this map if we just want to see what that's going to look like.
It allows you to show the current level of your material hierarchy.
Right, inside your sample slot with nothing else. And then if you click on Show End Result, you end up seeing the entire material, which is the combination of all your various maps and settings.
Sure.
Now, if you are down inside a map, again, I'm currently adjusting values inside my bitmap map that I applied to my material.
You can actually pull up your navigator.
I can, exactly. Very good. You'll notice here's where I am. I'm down inside Diffuse Color, Map 1, 3D Buzz page, like so. I can click the up arrow here to go to Parent, and that will take me, in this case, up to my material.
Right. This is like actually another way to navigate through your material hierarchy as opposed to going and opening up that separate material map navigator window.
That's right, and I use this a lot. Now, next to this, we have the ability to go forward to a sibling. So if I have another map that sits on the same level of the hierarchy, I can jump over to that. We're not really going to demonstrate that right now.
Sure.
Now, underneath this, we have the ability to pick materials from a given object. So I can come over here, and I can just click on a specific object. Maybe over here might be more prudent. And then click here, and all I've done is I've taken that material from our scene and dropped it into whatever my selected material slot is. Very quick, very easy, and a lot faster than going into Get Material, clicking on Scene, and selecting it from a name.
Right.
So it's just a little color chooser method of doing that. You can also rename using this window. So this is currently the Something Special material, which I could now rename to Superfly, like so. So, there's just any other name. Or, what is it? The 3ds Max User Reference Standard, Foo. So you name these anything you want. And then finally over here you have a button where you can control the type of material you're working with. Now if you click on this, you're going to get a list of all the different materials you can create. Now I'm not going to be going over each one of these. I can just kind of mention a few. Like we have architectural materials. These are based on real world materials, things like concrete, things like wood, stuff like that. So we have ink and paint, which is a toon shader.
That's cool.
We have morpher, which will allow us, if we use things like morph targets, which we'll be getting into a little bit later, we can blend between different types of materials. Like a real quick practical example, if you do use a morph target to make a character open his mouth like he's angry, you could have a separate material where that character is blushing, and then you could morph at the same time. So as he opens his mouth and he's angry, he also blushes.
Sure.
So very, very cool stuff. And we have top bottom, which has one material at the top and one material at the bottom. All sorts of interesting stuff in here.
Yeah.
Now, we are only going to be using the standard material throughout this entire, and actually most of our projects. So that's where we're going to leave things right now. Now, that is going to wrap things up for this particular video, going over this toolbar. Again, just to kind of mention this, you can use the material editor with a lot of efficiency without using a lot of these buttons.
Right.
However, the more you start using these buttons, the more you'll probably find yourself, getting used to them and using them more and more. So do practice with these.
Yeah, it's a good idea just to have a basic understanding of what they all are and what they mean at least.
That's right. So that is going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.